Thank you for joining us. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. Joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program today is author of the book, Healing God. Wake up and heal yourself. Just imagine, we're always in search of who and where God is, and sometimes we find it to be a lonely journey and sometimes even a futile one. Seems for some of us, or maybe even most of us, it isn't until we hit rock bottom that we finally heal the voice that's been within us all the time. Almost as though we're listening to the parable from the Wizard of Oz. You were home all the time. Joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program today is author and guest here on the program, Marie Levitt. Marie, thank you for joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program.
Oh, you're so welcome. Hey, Daniel.
This is an interesting book because of the many questions that you explore and the truths that you discover through those questions. I guess the basic thing a person wants to find out from you is, how did you finally get in touch with God?
I hit rock bottom, like you said. I hit a few rock bottoms, and as I figured out, you can hit as many as you want. So I hit a few, and I was pretty much cornered. I had to either die or do something about my health, my relationships, and that's where I turned to God. And I was agnostic my entire life. I was pretty much staying away from God for different reasons. And when I was cornered, I just figured out that my mind had that amazing capacity to communicate with universal wisdom, and it was so obvious and so clear that when it manifested, it just was like talking to you right now. So it just started one day. You know, I was looking for God. I went to Israel to look for God. I was looking for God in different religious places. Didn't find God there, and I was very disappointed not to find God there. And then when I was walking home from the last place I visited, there was just this voice that started talking to me and said, Marie, just go home, start writing. God would like to give books through you. And that's what I did. I just went home, I started writing, and that's how the book was written.
I think one of the most complex issues when it comes to knowing God, it seems, through the many years that I've been doing the program and speaking with people who speak of spirituality, is that we come into this world and there's a point in our lives that we begin to feel that we're alone and we're separate from everything. And then we go and we search out for God for meaning. What does our life actually mean? How was that answered for you?
I started from the place of being separate from God, that's true. And I was suffering, like I said, through relationships. And I guess I need a little clarification on your question.
Well, the clarification is that we tend to feel there's a point in our lives, as we're children becoming young adults, that somewhere along the way we begin to feel separate, like we're alone in the world, like our lives, we start to explore, what do our lives mean? And what I was asking is, for you, when and what was that point where that was happening for you?
Well, the question, what does my life mean, have been always there, like for many people. But I think that we are pretty much born into separateness. That, at least in my experience, in my case, that's how it was. I was born. I never remembered myself to be happy as a child, and the search for meaning before I discovered God was pretty much search for survival, for how to survive, how to make myself happy, how to create a love-filled life. And when I found God, and when I found God within, first of all, it was through dialogue, and then I started transforming into that energy. And when I completely transformed into it, and experienced myself as one, as the one, that's where the question about the meaning of life was irrelevant anymore. It was not there anymore, because at a certain point of transformation, I just merged with that question, with the meaning. So there was no question anymore. There was just living, just an experience of life, and that's the meaning.
It's fascinating that in this world there are many paths to knowing God, but there's only one God. And sometimes a person can be on a particular path and find out that it's more frustrating and hurtful and painful trying to find out who God is than on another different path. Now, it's interesting how man sort of personifies what God really is, and sometimes even blocks others from finding their way to God. In your conversations or in listening to God, what have you discovered has been a way people can understand through your book to find God?
You see, my book, and that's why my book, everybody can connect to it. It is because it is beyond the concept of religion or beyond the concept of meditation or defining God in any specific way. My book is really discovery of God within yourself. Mm-hmm. And that's what I did, because I did not have any religious background. As you know, I was born in Ukraine, in Soviet Ukraine. I did not have any concept of God. I did not have any teaching that I followed. And so my entire concept of God was coming from the inside. It was a discovery. It was self-discovery, really moving deeper and deeper and deeper into myself. That's how it was for me. But for other people, it can be anything else. And I've seen people, I've met people who got to the same place through meditation or through prayer or through, other practices. So it's very different, but ultimately we all are getting to, the same oneness. It's not, that's a common place.
Understood. Now, it's interesting, the conversations and the topics that you cover in your book, and of course one of the big ones is, for many of us, is judgment, because we are born into this world, into a family. Through circumstances and experiences, we begin to design beliefs. And sometimes those beliefs are so deep-rooted and hidden we're not even aware that we're following them, which then can create situations that you're judging, and then that can even create sort of a filter, if you will, for how you have an experience. And I would think in knowing God to be open to experiencing things instead of judging them and saying, I don't know if I want to deal with that. So let's talk about, the root of judgment in your experience and in your direct relationship and conversation with God.
The root of judgment for people is dividing the world into good and bad. And that's how we are born. We are born into the world that judges. And so we are taught to judge from a very small age. And, there is this mental concept of good and bad that we learn from our society. And there is a soul that knows what is good and what is bad, not in terms of good and bad, but it just knows what is good for me at this moment. And so many people follow that concept, that mind, the thought that is coming from the mind based on whatever they've learned, rather than following the soul. And there is this conflict. Very often there is a conflict. And so when people start following the mind and they creating the judgment, it feels bad. And the reason it feels bad, even for a person who judges, it feels bad because people feel angry. Usually people who judge, they feel angry or they feel hurt, right? And the reason it feels bad is because it really doesn't resonate with what we are. It really doesn't resonate with the soul. Mm-hmm. And it makes life so complicated. When I went from the place where, I was like everyone else before, to a place where there's completely no judgment of anything, life just becomes incredible. It just becomes amazing, everything just is as it is. it's freedom. There's so much freedom in living like that, but there is also daring. It's also, up to each individual to dare to live their life from that place of following the soul rather than living by this mental concept of good and bad that we've learned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you find that when you live in a life of judgment, that a lot of times you'll find yourself either living in guilt, regret, or fear. And that's not a very exciting place to be living from.
Right. That's true. It's so. I have a healing practice. I work with my clients, with many people, and it's amazing when people are able to step off this path of judgment and let go. And it's pretty much unlearning. It's pretty much process of unlearning of everything you've known before. Just forget about it and open up to what is right now without labeling it in any way. And when you're able to get there, it is so amazing. And the topics of all these feelings of rejection, of guilt, of blaming someone in something, it just becomes so irrelevant. You're right. It's really judgment related, all these topics.
I think one of the most fascinating things we've discovered here as we've been doing this program for about 6 years now is that as people approach midlife, it's hard to find anyone in this world who doesn't feel a level of guilt for something that they've either done or not done, regret for something they've either done or they've not done. And it's interesting especially to find people who seem to be breaking or changing their religious beliefs or maybe have never had those at all, any sort of spirituality. Now, in your work with people, what are the common things you've seen them come to you after perhaps reading your book or hearing about you, the things that they would like to try to understand and heal within themselves so that they can simply, as you say, let go and actually live through the soul?
I think most people really come to, that you're talking about guilt and regret, right?
Right.
Okay.
And basically what I'm saying within that context is they let those hold on to them instead of just breaking free and allowing themselves to live through soul.
Mm-hmm.
And what those common things in your experience have been that they tend to regret or they don't want to let go, that they have guilt for, things like that.
It's different attachments. Most of the things is different attachments in their life. I've had many people that I worked with who were attached to human beings, to ex-husbands, ex-wives, relatives that died and, had a lot of suffering because of that. So they felt guilty or they regretted something that they did or didn't do. Other people felt guilty or feel guilty for what they've done, But it's usually related to relationships. It's usually related to our interactions with other people that you feel guilty or you regret something. And it's, the concept of feeling guilty and regretting is victim thinking, and it is discussed in my book really, really in depth. Because in order to feel guilty, the guilt is two feelings. One is two things. One is that there's something happened in past that shouldn't have happened. That it's resisting the past. It's resisting what already happened on a mental level. On emotional level, it is feeling that you did something to someone, which is impossible because everybody creates their reality. So if you step off of if you step away from that victim thinking and you stop perceiving yourself as victim, so you say, nobody ever done anything to me, I created every experience I've ever had and I ever will have, then you start approaching other people like that. Then when you approach other people, you even if something happens that you do hurt them unintentionally, sometimes you do something that people get hurt. You even don't mean it, but they get hurt, right? Because certain feelings get triggered. You don't feel guilty for it. You don't take responsibility for emotional feelings of others. And that is something that we've been taught to do from a very young age. You know how small children, it is very often, very common, their parents would come to children and say, you made your mom angry, right? So all that concept becomes, it's really very damaging, because what it teaches us to take responsibility for the emotions of other people. So that's why we feel guilty, and that's the way to heal it, is really to step away from that and to say, I cannot make anyone angry. People can get angry because of something I'm doing, but it is up to them if they want to continue being angry, why they're angry, and
I think it's fascinating because you're hitting something right on the head, if you will. I remember many years ago, in understanding relationships, especially loving relationships with other people, how it was brought up through someone to me that I found it interesting, because I never thought about it this way before, that we tend to be in love with people, a partner, let's say, or we tend to like people because of how they make us feel around them. And I started really thinking about that for a minute, that we're searching out there, outside of ourselves, for a feeling that we should already have within ourselves as it is. Did you find that kind of a reality become very clear to you as you were in touch with soul?
That you're looking for confirmation from other people for feeling, this feeling, it's a feeling of being loved. It's a feeling of being acknowledged that most people want to have. Is that what you mean when you say being loved, being acknowledged?
Being loved, being acknowledged, how they make you feel when you're around them. Then all of a sudden you decide, this is somebody I want to be with for the rest of my life. 6 months or a year later, I'm not in love with you anymore. You're just not the same person you were when I first met you.
Right. And this is, you hit in here a really interesting topic, because this is a topic of acknowledgment. It's a topic of acknowledgment and love that is coming from the outside, that is obviously temporary. It always will be temporary, because mind will never be satisfied with it. Because the mind needs more. The mind always needs more. And it's people try to be acknowledged through things they do, through partners, through other people, and we get together with other people. There are many people that are with someone right now just because of how that person makes them feel. And it's a big question. What does it mean, make them feel? Because people pay a very high price for feeling certain way. So sometimes there's situations where people would really suffer in that relationship 90% of the time, when 10% just to receive that acknowledgement, 10% of the time to hear, "You're precious, I really love you, you're amazing, you're incredible." And it's a problem. And the solution is for that is to really find that acknowledgement inside of yourself. But this is also breaking through concepts that we have been taught to believe. Because to acknowledge yourself, you will have to say that it is okay to say about yourself, "I'm incredible, I'm amazing." And we've been taught to think that this is not right. This is not humble. This is you just think about it. If you were to say something like that about yourself, people would think there's something wrong with you. So all this concept of being humble and being arrogant, it should be reconsidered, or at least it was by me, because you can think that you're amazing, you can think that you're incredible, and you can think the same thing about everyone else. You don't need to put anyone else down. So I'm amazing, and everyone around me is amazing. I don't think there is even a word in any language for that. So, yeah, because, like being humble is putting yourself down, feeling that other people are more important or very important, right? And being arrogant is the opposite of that. It's feeling that you're important and other people are not. So both concepts arise from the point of fear. It's a fear-based concept. And when you step away from this, when you get into that self, which is powerful, which is present, which is all that is, then nobody's a victim. You don't have any urge to put anyone down, and yourself as well. But back to the question, it's really amazing when you allow yourself to experience that self-love in an amazing way. When you allow yourself to feel that you are unique, you are important. And as a matter of fact, we are important. As there are also chapters in my book about that. We all have unique fingerprints, unique talents, unique. It's amazing. It's fascinating that it's the one that created so many of itself to experience itself in so many countless ways. And if people could internalize and realize how important they are individually, they would never need to, cling into that love or that acknowledgement coming from someone else. If someone else would tell you that there is something wrong with you, you just say, that the person has a problem with their vision.
Keep it simple.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I know one thing, too, for people listening. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. Our guest today is Marie Levitt, author of Healing God, Wake Up and Heal Yourself, which is certainly what a lot of us really need to do in this world if we're ever going to have balance and peace. I always tend to try to meditate on nature, mainly because you see the great diversity that's right there in front of you. And those are moments for me that I'll tend to have a realization of the fact that, as you've been saying, each and every one of us have a very special reason we're here. The wonderful thing about the mystery of life is unfolding to discover what that is, what your contribution in being alive truly is. And one of the simplest things that you can start off with, as you talk about here, is in loving your neighbor. And that's simply, to me, as I was especially reading through that area there, is to say that just be the light so that you can consciously allow other people to do the same thing. And it's amazing what a tremendous ripple effect that is when you open soul like that, where people feel comfortable, even confident enough to do the same thing. Explain what that was for you when that happened.
Wow, that's amazing. It's amazing when you become that light, and this is so true, that many people think that love your neighbor is sacrificial. It's sacrificial concept for them. And you're so right. It's when you become that light, is that everybody benefits the most from you. It's when you the book says, there is a quote in the book, I'm quoting, your life is about you. When you become happy, everybody around you becomes happy. And that's how you contribute to the world the most. So it is living your life from that internal, that place of internal oneness. And no, in my experience, in my case, I don't compromise on that. So I can have conflict with the entire world, but as long as I know that my mind and soul are aligned, that I'm one, that I'm internally one, that's what matters. And I know that on that level, that's what I bring to this world. That's my contribution to the world, and obviously everybody else is as well. We contribute to this world our energy. We contribute to this world ourselves, even though there are deeds that we do, there are, actions, and we all do important things in terms of doing. But it is that energy that can awaken the same presence in people. And, I'll just give you an example from my healing practice, in my healing sessions. That's what I do, because I'm so in that energy. I'm so one. I'm really in that energy of being one. So when I am working with people. I'm just opening that space for them, that loving space for them to experience, to connect to the same place inside themselves. And that does miracles. It's amazing. It's incredible to observe that. Just, and from interaction with other people. Like yesterday, I went to a concert of Krishna Das, and I hugged the person after the concert. I just gave him a hug, and it was amazing to experience that energy, that light, that brightness. That it's we just hugged, and I could stay there forever. I could never go home. And that's what we bring to the world. We bring to the world our energy. And it's really important for people to understand, because people trying to do something very important. And when they do that something very important, sometimes and very often, it's a mind that decides what is important at that moment. And so, or what is important in general. And so the mind fixates on it, and then people start suffering, doing that and suffering, because they think that is their life purpose. They contribute to the world by doing that. But in truth, I woke up this morning and I just sat down and I listened to music for like 2 hours, and I was at that moment I was fulfilling my life purpose.
It sure is amazing what happens, and I'm sure you'll agree with this, Marie, is that when you begin to let go and you begin to allow, that a moment is just what it brings you, is what exactly is in that moment. You don't have some preconceived ideal about what it's supposed to be. So that eliminates the suffering right there, because you don't have an expectation anymore. Sometimes people, though, when they hear about that particular idea or concept about trying not to have any expectations, is to say, well, if you don't have any expectations, then you really don't have any real motivation or goal. But the truth is, in not having expectations, are to say, I accept this moment fully and divinely as it is, while at the same time enjoying and exploring the special gift that it holds for me. And too many times, if we have expectation, I think you just write it so well in your book, that as you can let that go, it's amazing what you begin to see. At first I was blind, and now I can see. How was that for you?
Oh my gosh, it's an amazing experience. It's incredible. It's imagine when you're driving, and when you're driving like on a very, very high speed, right? How much can you see? You're just looking in front of you. The only thing you can see, you're focused on driving, on movement. The slower you drive, the more you can see. And that's what it becomes. That's what life becomes. And and in my case, when I drive, literally and not literally, I may have in my mind an idea of where I'm going. Mm-hmm. And obviously we do need to have that idea. That's why we have the mind. So the mind is here to listen to that urge coming from the soul. But even with this, example with the car that I'm giving you right now, I had very often that I would enter my car, and I would drive to a certain place, and then in the middle, something would happen, not something, it's just an urge. I would see something, or I would feel something, and I could just stop my car, or turn it around, or go somewhere else, and, just follow it's, in my case, I really don't, I have direction. I know where I'm going approximately, but I never know if I will get there.
Ah.
I never know, because, of course, if I schedule it with someone, I'll call and I'll reschedule. But it is more important for me to be in that present moment, in that urge that is arising from the soul, because life becomes so rich. You can actually see behind the scenes things that when you focus on moving forward and you drive in high speed, and you know where you're going, and you know that you're late and what time you should be there, and who's waiting for you there, and what you're supposed to say, and what they're expecting. That's what the mind becomes focused on. And it's really very difficult from that place to follow the urge from the soul. There is no urge. I mean, the urge is coming, but, That's what blindness is.
Mm-hmm.
You just don't see it. And when you release that leash of, the mind, and you just allow that soul to manifest through, and you allow yourself not to have any expectations, which is very difficult for most people. So it's a process. It took me a process of about 3 years to get to a point where I'm just completely in flow of life. There is nothing that I do that I have to do.
Mm-hmm. Sure must be interesting to reflect on your life and where you were, say, 10 years ago and where you are today. What would you say to that person of 10 years ago?
Doesn't exist. I cannot even talk to it. That person doesn't exist.
You see, there it is in the hole, folks. No regret right there. That's what we've been talking about.
Yeah. It's just there is no memory of that, no. You see, in my case, the reason I was able to write this book and the uniqueness of my mind is that I am always in the present moment, and I was born like that. I was pretty much, stuck in present moment most of my life. So my mind was erasing information and was clearing. It's like clear. For me, there is no problem. There was never a problem to have no thoughts, which scientifically should be impossible, but it's not my case, So I feel at home with that emptiness. I feel at home with that, freedom of thought, and with just being, with just experiencing myself. I can sit for 2 hours and just in the nature and experience myself fully through senses while being fully present with no thought. So it's an amazing experience. And so, before, 10 years ago, I was fighting it. I thought there was something wrong with me. Mm-hmm. But today, I'm not. I just know it's a bliss. So, when you accept yourself as you are, you realize that some of the things that you thought were your weaknesses, they're actually your biggest contribution to yourself and the world. So, but, to answer your question, that is one of the reasons why I don't that person in the past doesn't exist, because I cannot even imagine it. I am in the now. Mm-hmm. I literally am. So I cannot imagine tomorrow. I cannot imagine yesterday. It's right now. That's all that is. I'm talking to you right now. There is nothing else.
And there's the secret seed known as eternal existence.
Yeah, it is eternal existence because it's a continuous moment. It is one moment, but it continues. There is no end to it.
A lot of fun there, that's for sure. The book is really interesting for the listeners out there to understand that it isn't something you have to start from page 1 and go to the very end, but it actually invokes different chapters with different explorations. It can range anywhere from self-acceptance to understanding the self to knowing, what your place is in the world. And I think because of its simplicity, people will find it to be very engaging. To be able to do exactly what you suggest on the cover, which is to wake up and heal yourself just by learning to see and listen in a different way, which is learning to listen and see from the inside out and realizing that we do constantly create our own reality. And Mary, if you could you please give out a website where people can find out more about your work?
It's Marie. It's www.healinggod.net, healing God in 2 words, .net. And there is information on my website about what I do, about my workshops, about my healing sessions, Temple of Joy, and other projects I created and I'm doing.
And forgive me because you were right, it is Marie. I don't know why I said Mary. Kind of pausing in one of those internal moments there. The book is Healing God, Wake Up and Heal Yourself. Our guest today, Marie Levitt. Thank you for joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program. It was a pleasure.
It was wonderful. Thank you so much for interviewing me.
Thank you.
A pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. We want to also thank you, the listeners out there, for tuning in. Again, the book is Healing God, Wake Up and Heal Yourself. Our guest today, Marie Levitt. We want to also encourage you to visit us at our website at beyond50radio.com. Sign up for our free weekly e-newsletter and visit us at our blog where we archive even today's show, so you'll be able to enjoy this at your convenience, as well as some great hot links and information for you to use there as well. Thank you again for tuning in. This is the Beyond 50 Radio program. I'm Daniel Davis, and remember, live your day past halfway.